K-State Culturally is virtual programming centered on celebrating, uplifting, and educating the Wildcat community through the lens of communities of color connected or affiliated with Kansas State University.
So to get started, Carrie Coburn is here with us today. Ooh, let me go back. And she is our guest speaker. Carrie actually attended the University of Kansas, so she is fortunately friends with us and has agreed to help us with this today. And she was scheduled to join us back in March for a live event on campus, right around the time COVID happened and everything went online. So thank you to Kerri for coming back with us today. And thank you to Dr. Jessica Elmore. She helped us kind of get Kerri's schedule lined up. So special thanks to her for helping us with that. Like I said, Kerri attended the University of Kansas, but she does have family that go to K-State, and she's active in our Alumni Association. While she was at KU, she studied Spanish and psychology and completed a study abroad program in Mexico. And then she went on to receive her MBA from the University of Illinois in Chicago. She is here to tell us more about her experience, and then we can ask questions if you have any. If you do have questions, you can type them in the chat, and I will go over those at the end. So I will hand it over to Kerri, and we can get started.
Thanks, Amanda. I appreciate that. Like you said, I am a Jayhawk. However, my husband is a proud, very, very proud graduate of Kansas State University, and our oldest daughter is also. And my mom had attended K-State for the first part of her master's degree. She ended up finishing up at St. Louis University, but she did start there at K-State. And so in honor of my mom, we did start a scholarship there, the Lorraine Fleming Scholarship right there on your campus that you can apply for, that my husband and I started in my mom's honor. But I know today's conversation is really about the impact of an international education and the part it plays in your career. And I know that for me personally, had I not studied abroad in Guadalajara, Mexico, I would not be a vice president today. So I do want to talk you through that. So it's interesting, as I was studying Spanish, after one of my classes, I had a professor that asked why I had not applied for the study abroad program. And I told him that I was not aware of the program, and I did not know the benefits. So he and I proceeded to have a conversation for about 20 minutes. And after speaking with him, I was hooked. I definitely wanted to apply. What I didn't realize was that was the last day to apply. And we had 1 hour to get it done. And the program was going to close. So at KU, the campus is quite large, and there are buses that run along the campus to enable you to get to class on time. So the professor and I emerged from the building, and we had missed the bus. So we had to run to get to the appropriate building. We got in there, we were sweaty, we were, in very professional terms, a hot mess. So we got there in the building, and I actually had to be interviewed because they wanted to ensure that the students that were in the program possessed the maturity to be able to handle living and going to school in a different culture. And I also had to have a pretty good command of the Spanish language. So I did well in the interview process, completed the application forms. My professor also had to be interviewed to vouch for me. He had to sign the documentation, and there you go, I was accepted into the program. So I remember walking outside of the building and thinking, wait a minute, I didn't even tell my dad. I had not secured money, and I had not told my adorable boyfriend, John, that I was going to school in Guadalajara for the summer. And I wanted to share that with you because that doesn't have to be your story. You can actually be intentional about studying abroad and take advantage of the services that are provided right there on campus for you. So you don't have to be like me. But I hope you are like me and that you take advantage of the opportunity. And I actually wanted to take a moment to thank the folks at the Diversity and Multicultural Student Affairs Office, as well as the Education Abroad Office, for partnering and bringing this information to students. I applaud you for doing that. So some of the skills that I acquired while studying Guadalajara, and I was there for the summer, is I learned how to negotiate. And what was interesting for me was when I arrived in Mexico, that was only the second time that I had ever flown on an airplane. And I had to get from the airport to the hotel, which was the rendezvous point for all the students that were in the program. And this was a partnership between the University of Kansas and Penn State. So I got there, I was very proud of myself, and I acquired an information packet. In the packet was information about families that were willing to host students for the summer. Now, again, that's not your story. Everything is laid out for you there at K-State. But for back in the day, and this was the 80s, folks, we had this packet of information. We selected the families that we thought we might be most compatible with, and met with various families, and then selected a family to live with. And one of the students in the cohort was my roommate. And back then, it was $4 a day to stay with the family. The great thing about staying with the family, however, was that it enabled full immersion in the culture. You lived with the family, you ate with them. If they had a birthday party, you were at the birthday party. Any festivities they participated in, they took you with them. Any sightseeing they did, they took you with them. So it was wonderful for me. And after being there for 1 month, I was dreaming in Spanish. I was all in. In fact, when I came back from being at school in Guadalajara, after a while, my dad said, "Do you think you could start speaking English again?" And I said, "I am speaking English." He said, "No, you're speaking Spanish." I didn't realize I hadn't turned it off. So when I say I was fully committed and all in, I absolutely was. What was awesome for me was that while at the University of Kansas, I had studied Mexican culture. So to be able to actually go to school in Mexico and actually witness and see firsthand that which I had studied was marvelous. For example, on the 4th of July weekend, we actually took the bus because we didn't have any money. So we took the bus and went to Mexico City for the 4th of July holiday. And I had the opportunity to visit the pyramids, the very pyramids that I had studied. I was actually there. And I remember climbing on those pyramids, and there was a platform in the middle of one pyramid. And I remember sitting on the platform and looking out, excuse me, and looking out while sitting on the platform and looking at all the people down below and looking at the land and thinking, here I am sitting at a high place. And what that told me was that I had the opportunity to be whatever I wanted to be. When you can look out and see the expanse of a land, that just told me that there were no borders in sight, if you will, which meant there was no opportunity was impossible. There were endless avenues available. And I sat there for quite a while thinking about that. It was a pivotal moment for me. Some additional skills that I acquired when I got there. See, I was ill prepared, and that doesn't have to be your story. So here's what I mean by that. When I got there, I only had enough money to last for a couple of weeks. So my dad had planned on wiring money to me every week, but we didn't have that pre-set up. So we had to find a place that would handle wire transfers. Once the money arrived, I had to take the money to the bank, which means I had to get a bank account for the bank to cash the money so I would have money available. So I learned very quickly money management because I didn't have steady money coming in. I had to get it when it came from my dad. Again, you can be a little better than that. You can actually set a plan in place, work with Amanda, work with Joe, and have it all mapped out before you get on the plane and go wherever you're going. Also, while I was there, I learned how to communicate effectively and to actively listen because the family I was living with, they did not speak English. When I went to the grocery store, wherever I went, everything was in Espanol. We had to walk to school. So I was with my classmates at that time. We'd walk about a mile and a half to school. And once you hit campus, everything was in Spanish. And even though the professors were from the US, we only spoke in Spanish. Every day there was siesta. So you had to walk back home, take the break. And on television, they ran English cartoons at that time. So it gave me a chance to hear my language, because you do get a little hungry for hearing your own language spoken. Then we go back to school, finish out the day, and then come back home. I also learned how to be more strategic and forward thinking because not everything was mapped out for you. Now, of course, your classes were mapped out, but how you spent your time, how you spent your money, and how you took advantage of the opportunity to be in another country, I had to plan ahead. And that really taught me strategic thinking. That's a cornerstone of the work that I do today. Now, I've been in the insurance industry for a little over 30 years. And I started out in Kansas City. and took advantage of many corporate relocations. Having studied abroad, it taught me that I could live somewhere outside of my my normal community. And so I was been very blessed to have, when I worked for the Allstate Insurance Company, I worked in Kansas City. Then I was promoted and relocated to Nashville, Tennessee. And while I was there, an opportunity became available in Puerto Rico because Allstate had made the decision they wanted to have some international offices. So they opened an office in China, Italy, Canada, and Puerto Rico. So even though Puerto Rico is part of the US in that it is a US territory, Allstate considered it international because everything was going to be conducted in Spanish. All of the employees were going to be Spanish speaking. All the laws we had to learn relative to insurance was all going to be in Spanish. So they had six jobs available for the Puerto Rico opportunity. They filled them all, and the sixth one was still open. And that job matched my skill set perfectly. I interviewed for the position. Half of my interview was in Spanish, half was in English. And it was interesting because I was the only non-Hispanic person to apply for the job, and I did get it. And my family and I relocated to Puerto Rico, and we were there for 3 years. And why this was another pivotal moment for me, that was a startup operation. That meant that we had to create the business plan, determine and identify the customer segment we wanted to target, create the products. We had to price our products, find people to sell our products for us. We had to market the products, hire and train employees, learn the local laws, determine how to do financial reporting, how to pay taxes, all of that, built it from scratch. That was a startup opportunity. Within those 3 years, we made $24 million. So we learned very quickly how to make money, how to lose money, and how to capitalize on the resources we had. Had I not been in a startup situation, I would not have the job that I have today. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a minute. I want to circle back to this whole notion of being open to relocating once you have your job. It's actually very lucrative. So again, every relocation that I've had, from Kansas City to Nashville, Puerto Rico, then Chicago, then Denver, Colorado, back to Chicago, Springfield, Illinois, and now I'm in Cincinnati. Every time you get relocated from a corporate perspective, it is indeed a promotion. And with the promotion is a new salary, right? So what Allstate would do at that time was they would give you a 20 to 25% bonus based upon your new salary. They gave you that check. Whenever you buy a home, you have to pay closing costs. You got to pay the realtor, you have to pay for the title and all that paperwork, pay for attorney fees. Allstate paid for that for you as part of your relocation package. You also got a percentage of the commission that the realtor made. They wrote you a check for that. Once you signed on the dotted line and bought your new house, you got a signing bonus that was 10% of your salary. If you were unable to sell your current home within 3 months of acquiring your new home, Allstate purchased your house. And they took care of all of that and bought our home that we had in Nashville. And oh, by the way, in Puerto Rico, our children were going into the 3rd grade and the 6th grade, and they did not speak Spanish. So they weren't going to do so well in public school. So we had to send them to private school. My company paid all of their tuition for those 3 years. So again, having had the opportunity to study abroad, understanding what it's like to navigate different cultures, because think about that. I went from Kansas City to Tennessee, to Nashville, to Puerto Rico, to Chicago, Illinois, to Denver, Colorado, to Springfield, Illinois, to Cincinnati. It takes a lot to be able to navigate different places, and each state has its own culture. And studying abroad helped me with that immensely. Let's see, what else did I want to share with you guys before I turn it back over to you, Amanda? So something else with regard to being a corporate person, Amanda, you had mentioned that I have my master's degree. At Allstate, they have a fast track program for leaders. And I was fortunate enough to qualify for the fast track program. And those of us that were in that program were eligible to apply for an MBA at the University of Illinois, Chicago. So I met the application requirements. You had to have 2 senior executives to sponsor you. They filled out the paperwork, and all of my tuition was paid for. So again, the negotiating, getting senior executives to sponsor and support you. I learned those negotiation skills while studying abroad in Guadalajara. Couple more things I wanted to share with you guys. So my current role, I am the Vice President of Corporate Underwriting at American Modern Insurance Company. And American Modern is a subsidiary of Munich Re. Munich Re is housed in Munich, Germany. Munich Re employs about 40,000 employees worldwide, and they are a $54 billion company. They're the second largest reinsurer in the world, and they look for people that have international experience. So we have employees in Singapore, Tokyo, Barcelona, Argentina, South Africa, New Jersey, New York, Cincinnati, etc. But it's a very viable opportunity for persons that are accustomed to navigating cultures, that work well with all kinds of people. And oh, by the way, if you happen to speak another language, that bodes well for you as well. Upon coming to American Modern, again, a subsidiary of Munich Re, they needed someone to begin a startup. So remember, I had startup experience by working in Puerto Rico when I was with Allstate, right? And so the startup they wanted to begin at American Modern was a group called Client Operations. And Client Operations was meant to conduct audits on some of our salespeople. And so I built that, and I knew how to build something from scratch because I learned that while working for Allstate in Puerto Rico, right? In the 8 years that I've worked at American Modern, I've been the vice president of client operations. 6 months later, they asked me to also pick up the personal lines underwriting department as their vice president. So I was running 2 departments at the same time. A year after that, a 3rd department. So I was the vice president of client operations and underwriting, which included personal lines insurance as well as commercial insurance. And now for the past 2 years, another startup within my same company, corporate underwriting. And so with corporate underwriting, I'm accountable for 1.2 billion in revenue, ensuring that we have appropriate processes, procedures, and protocols in place. But again, I wanted to share all that with you because had I not studied abroad and learned Spanish and learned how to navigate cultures, had I not studied abroad, I would not have gotten the opportunity to qualify for the position in Puerto Rico. Had I not qualified for that position in Puerto Rico, I would not have learned how to create a startup. Had I not learned how to create a startup, I would not have been on my 4th leg of being a vice president in 8 years, 4 different positions at my current company. I had mentioned, last thing I'll share with you guys, and I'll turn over to you, Amanda. I had mentioned to you guys that upon going to Guadalajara, that was only the 2nd time that I had ever been on an airplane. Well, throughout the course of my career, I have traveled to Canada, England, France, Switzerland, New Zealand, Jamaica. Every year I have to go to go to Germany to meet with the folks at Munich Re for my job. Of course, you know that I've gone to school in Mexico, worked in Puerto Rico, been to the Dominican Republic, Curacao, St. Martin, St. John, the list goes on. But I feel comfortable navigating all of those spaces because I studied abroad. And what's also a blessing for you guys is you have technology. I didn't have it back in the day. Back in the day, we didn't have cell phones. We didn't have laptops. So we didn't have an opportunity to continuously stay in contact with friends and family. You guys do. So again, studying abroad ensures that you'll be well-rounded. It shows you how to embrace diversity and capitalize on experiencing people different than yourself. It enables you to navigate any space or situation that you're in. And also it definitely increases your earning potential. So if you have the opportunity to study abroad or travel abroad, I say go for it. I know that I wouldn't be where I am today had I not been afforded that opportunity. So that's kind of my story. So I'll turn it back over to you, Amanda.
Great. Thank you, Kerri. That was so interesting and exciting. I will say, I'm pretty jealous of the perks of your Allstate.
Yeah, it's been amazing.
That was amazing. That's a great example, like when you were talking about different places in the US being different cultures. It doesn't necessarily, like, study abroad can help us and international education can help us even if we don't leave the US again. So I studied abroad one time and since then have worked in international education, but I've worked in several different fields, and having that experience of really challenging myself and doing something I was uncomfortable with really helped me. So your point about different places in the US is really great. And kind of on the same note, for any student that is kind of hesitant about entering a new country or going somewhere you're not familiar with, I would encourage you to think about where you have come from. So maybe you are a student that did come from Chicago. Coming to Manhattan, Kansas is a super different feeling, very different town. So studying abroad, when you think about that, like you've kind of done it before. You've had that shock to your system, whether it's going from big to small, or maybe you're looking at going into an even bigger city. So I encourage you to kind of explore it if that's something that you're thinking about. I have a couple of questions, Kerri, and I think there's one that's come through the chat. If anyone else has questions that they think of, just let me know. You mentioned that you signed up for the Mexico program very spur of the moment, last minute, and that you hadn't talked to your dad. So how did you, if you don't mind sharing, bring that up, and how did you talk about this with your family?
Well, at the time, it was my intent to earn 2 bachelor's degrees in 4 years, psychology and Spanish. And I had intended to go to school that summer at KU. And so I called my dad and I said, well, Dad, I have an opportunity to go to Mexico. He said, really? For a trip? I said, no, to go to school. And he said, wow. At that time, my father had only flown one time on an airplane. And he said, that's such a wonderful opportunity for you to experience something bigger than yourself. And he said, let's go for it. And he said, well, how much does it cost? And what was really fortunate for me, Amanda, was that the exchange rate was quite lucrative for us. So for every $1 of American dollars, you got 800 pesos. So it was actually cheaper for me to go to school in Mexico than in Kansas. But the beautiful thing is that my parents were very much so into education, and they recognized that there was a tremendous amount of opportunity. And my parents had always encouraged me to think beyond St. Louis, Missouri, which is where I'm from. And my father would always say, there's an entire world out there. Take advantage of it. My mom happened to pass away when I was 19, and she never got the opportunity to fly on an airplane. My mom was an educator, and she and I would spend time traveling, but through books. We had many, many books. We had old encyclopedias back in the day. We often went to the library together, and we would look at different cities and different towns and different countries. And my mom said, one day you will get to experience those countries. And my dad remembered my mom talking to me about that. So my dad was very encouraging, very supportive. We just had to get our pennies together and get on the plane. So he was quite supportive.
Great. And I like that you mentioned that you started by saying I have an opportunity, and then like, no, but it's educational.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's not just spring break, something more worthwhile.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of on that note, a question from the chat. What advice, and maybe Joe or I can also help answer this, but what advice do you have for students whose parents say it is too dangerous to go abroad?
The reality is it's dangerous everywhere. And so whatever precautions a person would take, whether you're at school, whether you're going to the store, wherever you are, you would take those exact same precautions while studying abroad. The reality is in the world that we live in today, it's quite dangerous all over, right? And so it's imperative for everyone to be attentive, be aware of where you are. Always let somebody know where you're going. I think you would do that today while you're at school. I'm sure you've got a friend, you've got a roommate, you've got a professor, somebody knows where you are. Take your technology with you. Again, back in the day when I went, we didn't have cell phones. There was no such thing. We didn't have laptops. Well, your cell phone's a walking computer. It's got a GPS chip. People always know where you are. The thing is to be smart. You're posting information online and you're telling people where you are. They know where you are. I also made it a point, however, to always, when venturing about, I always had one of my roommates with me. Or a classmate with me, right? I never did go anywhere by myself. And there were some times when people would come up to me, they'd recognize that I was an American, and they would say, oh, you must have some money. You're over here on vacation. And they would ask me for money. And I'd say, nope, I'm a poor student. I don't have a darn thing. I say, you see these shoes I got on? Can you tell they're not very stylish? And I just got on a pair of Levi's. They're like, yeah, you don't have any money. I said, I don't have a thing. My point in sharing that story is be smart. be fast on your feet, right? But take care, do what makes sense. I was invited to a party, and I remember there was lots of drinks flowing, right? And I decided to just have a Coke instead. Again, being mindful of my surroundings. I was with people that I didn't know, as well as my roommates and my roommate and members of my class. But the point is to be smart. But you know, it's actually more dangerous not to take the chance than to take the chance. If you have an opportunity to broaden your thought process, if you have an opportunity to increase your earning potential, you should take the chance. It's more dangerous to remain status quo and just stay where you are because it limits your potential and what you could become. So just kind of think it through and also share the information with your parents or your family members. Everything's online, they can see it. It's online, right? And when you get there, take your phone or laptop and show it around, let them see your surroundings. It's available. My dad didn't have that. He just had to have faith and trust. And the last thing I'll leave you with on that, Amanda, is my dad had faith in me as a person. My father knew that I was responsible. My professor vouched for me relative to my maturity, and they knew that I was serious about my education. So the bottom line with that is if people believe in you here at K-State, they should be able to believe in you whether you're in Guadalajara, Puerto Rico, or Singapore. Should make any difference.
Thank you.
Mhm.
I would also add, just from the K-State side, one thing that might help to tell parents is that for almost all of our programs, we do have they're not K-State staff, but the host program has on-site staff that are there to support students on the ground. They might pick students up from the airport. They'll do like orientation, so they get to know from locals about the city that they're in, kind of the really hands-on information, and that's first thing. That's true for a lot of summer and semester programs. So for most programs that students go on, if that's a concern that your family has, there's usually some kind of on-site staff available to you. Another question from the chat: what to you was the most difficult process or step of studying abroad? Like the application process, or talking to your family, or coming back? Anything that you would say was the most difficult part?
You know, the most difficult part was that I was not prepared. So here's what I mean by that. The university was prepared. Just like you said, Amanda, where you with having staff, et cetera, people to support you. We had professors and other students. I didn't take the time to make sure that I took with me everything I needed. And so I have lots of allergies, right? I didn't take the time to study how air quality, et cetera, is different. The mold count, the pollen count, things that I'm allergic to are different in Guadalajara as compared to Missouri or Kansas. So I didn't take the right medicine with me. So again, it was on me. I didn't actively prepare with being there. I also took lots of blue jeans, right? Lots of Levi's. I had moccasins to walk in. I didn't take any tennis shoes. I didn't take any shorts. So you talk about a sister burning up, I was burning up. So by the time I left Guadalajara and having to walk all the time to school, I was quite slim by the end of the summer. But my point is the most difficult thing was I didn't prepare. Everything else was set up for me. I didn't do my job to get ready for it, right? Mentally, I was prepared. Emotionally, I was prepared and I was excited. I had all the school supplies I needed. I took those things with me, but I didn't take a water bottle, just little things like that. So it's that was really the most difficult thing, and that's actually the easiest thing, right? That I should have planned and mapped out. And I also didn't take advantage effectively of the staff there at KU to get me ready, right? So I didn't follow the checklist. They gave me all the information. I didn't follow it. So I showed up without my money, without having all the appropriate clothing. I wasn't prepared. So that was on me. And I would say that was the most difficult thing. The things that people would consider most difficult, whether such as affiliating with someone different than yourself, assimilating, those things weren't hard for me. I have a big personality, as you can see, and I'm open to change and open to things that were different. So those things weren't hard for me.
Great. Yeah, that's good advice about the weather. When, in our pre-departure orientation that we host every semester, we have an example from a student that studied in Australia, and she brought
Awesome.
lots of warm weather clothes, so she thought she was prepared, but then realized she was going to Australia during the rainy season and needed all the opposite things. So that's a small thing that's, yeah, good advice. Okay.
Amanda, I have a question for Kerri, if there's no other question. So Kerri, thanks for everything you're sharing. I'm curious, if you think back after you graduated and you started going on job interviews and things, what were was there anything you shared related to your education abroad experience, like in interviews or things like that, that you thought were either really effective or were really well received by the companies you were interviewing?
Yes, I made it a point to point out that I had studied abroad, because what I wanted them to understand was that I could navigate different spaces, that I could remain in control of myself and get my work done, even without a lot of guidance, if you will, because I didn't have my parents handy, right? The professors that were there with us were professors I met once I got there. It taught me how to formulate relationships, how to network effectively, and those were skills that I learned there. I also was looking for a company that was open to doing more than working solely in the United States. And so I turned the tables on them during the interview process. And I asked, how are you expanding your footprint? Tell me more about your customer base. Are you looking to have customers solely here in Chicago area, all state? Are you looking to grow? And they were very intrigued by that. And so what that told them was that I was forward thinking, I was strategic, and I made it a point to remind them during the interview process, show that I learned those strategic thinking skills while studying abroad. So I did use that to my advantage, and it worked for me.
That's great. I like that point about turning it back on them. I think
Mhm.
that's a great strategy in an interview. Yeah, thanks.
Okay. A couple more from the chat. How did you take care of your personal care, like getting your hair done, or other ethnic focused personal care, or things that are like specific to your routine?
Okay. When the Puerto Rico opportunity came up, and I had my interview over the phone with the regional vice president of Puerto Rico, the company then paid for my entire family to go to the island to see if the family would feel comfortable there. And when I met with my soon-to-be new boss, I asked him a question. I said, Jim, his name was Jim Alanis. I said, Jim, where can I get my hair done? I just put it out there. I said, these are the needs that I have. I said, yes, I need for my children to have private education because they don't speak English. I need you to pay for that, Jim. But I also need to know where I can get my hair done and take care of my personal needs. And he said, let me help you with that. Let's go for a walk. And so the office was actually located in a bank. And so it was in the business district in Atorrey, which is a downtown area of Puerto Rico. And we started walking, and he pointed people out that looked like me. He said, look at her. Is her hair like yours? I said, yeah, it is. He said, let's take a walk over to the drugstore. And so we did. And in the drugstore, there was a full section of hair products that fit my needs, as well as things that would fit my skincare needs, because I didn't want my skin to get overly dry. It's very windy there. It rains there. I was concerned about my hair becoming frizzy, if you will. And so I needed to have the appropriate products. And I said, well, Jim, if you're able to, since he was able to adequately answer my question about how I could get my hair done, because appearance is very important for all of us, right? It's a point of pride. And if you're working in a corporate environment, you always have to look professional. And I had the guts to ask him, where could I get my hair done? And I said, Jim, I'm willing to accept the job. You've convinced me, but by the time I get back, I need to have for you to have a beautician already lined up for me. Now that may sound trivial or silly, but it's actually not. It's part of who you are.
Mhm.
You've got to be able to get the care that you need. Not only in my case as an African American woman, and being able to get my hair done as well as my children's hair done. My husband needed a barber, right? Again, needed to have the appropriate skincare products for my skin, and I needed a doctor. And I asked Jim to have all that set up for me before I came back, and he did. So my point is, be bold with what you need. Don't cover up and kind of hold back, if you will. If you need something, put it out there, because if they want you bad enough, they'll make it happen.
Awesome. Thank you. For students that are watching and thinking about going abroad, obviously you can't fly to that country and do that walk around like Kerri was able to. But again, we have partners from on-site staff, and if you have concerns like that, or maybe it's something like I am religious and I need to go to this institution, or I regularly see a therapist and I'd like to be able to continue that. Any concerns that you have about your daily schedule here, those are super important to think about when you're preparing to go abroad, and don't forget them, especially if there's something that helps you get through your day, like self-care or something like that. So let your education abroad advisor know, or if you're not comfortable telling us about that, let your academic advisor know, and maybe they can get back with us. But we can reach out to our host partners on the ground and say, okay, we have a student that is Jewish, or that is, like you said, needs these specific hair care products. Do you know if they can find those there? How do they get those? And we can find out so that you know ahead of time that some things you'll be able to find. Let's see. One other question, how was the process like overcoming the language barrier? So you were studying Spanish. Would you say you were fluent when you went abroad, or were you pretty advanced?
I was pretty advanced, but I would not have considered myself fluent, right? And what I mean by that is I was translating. If someone said something in Spanish, I would translate it to English and then figure out how to respond and respond back. So I did have some command, but again, after being there for 1 month only, I was dreaming in Spanish. Everything was Spanish for me. I just had completely made the switch. So to your point, the foundation was already there. I had studied Spanish in high school. I had already studied for 2 years at the University of Kansas. My dad, he thinks he's pretty cool. He speaks a little Spanish. And I also made it a point to live in the international dorm while at the University of Kansas, so I could hear Spanish all the time. So I was intentional about this. And so it wasn't a barrier for me, but being immersed, it made it come even faster. And then to your point, by the time I left there, I was definitely fluent.
Yeah.
No more translating, just immediately would speak Spanish.
That's also the feedback that I've heard from almost every student that lives with a host family. Because now there's a lot of times you have the option, live with a host family or live in a residence hall. And I've never heard a student have a bad experience with a host family. Also, kind of on the same note, for students that aren't studying a language but that are interested in going abroad, most classes that you take, unless you're specifically going for language learning, will be taught in English. So you can get the academic part in English, but there is still that you'll be living there. So now there's apps like Duolingo or like Babbel or things like that that you can try. The International Student Services Office at K-State also hosts basic language training. That's $35. It's not for credit, it's 8 weeks, and it's taught by an international student or faculty at K-State. And they have classes like Spanish, introductory and advanced. I think they've had Italian, German, Chinese, Arabic. So if you are looking to get an introduction to a language but don't want to do it for credit, that's an option that's available at K-State too every semester, just to kind of get some basics.
Amanda, can I jump in with another question for Kerri? So Kerri, I think you mentioned that the parent company that you currently work for is based in Germany.
Yes.
And you've had to travel to Germany. So you haven't shared that you studied German in college or anything. So what was that like maybe when you've gone on visits to Germany? Did you try to learn a little bit of German, or maybe that was more of a language barrier for you to overcome?
Actually, it's not a language barrier in that because Munich Re is an international company, they speak English.
Okay.
And because they have subsidiaries all over the world, they speak multiple languages. And so, but traveling, however, so the first time that I went, my boss took me, and so he knew how to navigate everything, not a problem. The next time I went by myself, and everything in the airport is in German or English, but you still have to figure out how to get from the airport to the hotel and then to get to the office. And in some cases, to your point there, Joe, I would encounter people that didn't speak English. So I just had to kind of figure it out and, find the right cabbie so I could get over to the office. I've not learned German, and it's not a requirement and hasn't been a hindrance at all. But again, it's an international company. And so the beauty about that is just like with the study abroad program, it teaches you how to value other cultures. So Munich Re does the same, and they value the American culture, and they've taken it upon themselves to ensure that all their senior executives are multilingual. They not only speak German and English, many of them speak French and other languages as well. So it hasn't been a barrier. And the beautiful thing is that everyone is open to collaboration and embracing cultural differences. And that's what's wonderful about working for an international company. It's not an issue. Yeah, it's the point of celebration.
All right. Well, I think that I've made it through the questions in the chat. If I have missed any from anyone, please let me know. But thank you again, Kerri, for joining us today. This was great. I really enjoyed hearing about your career. And yeah, like I said, quite jealous of all the perks of your job. Maybe I should consider a different field or something. But thanks so much for joining us. And again, thanks to Dr. Elmore and the staff at the DMSA office for helping us get this first event started. For those of you that are looking for the next two events, we do not have those scheduled yet, but they will be likely one in February and one in March. But I have all of your email addresses from the Zoom registration, so I will let you all know when those are scheduled. If you have any friends that wanted to attend this session, but were not able to because of cost conflicts, we are recording it, so just let me know and I can get that out so that they can be considered as well. But I think that that's all we have for today.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate the opportunity to spend some time with you today.
Thanks, Kerri. This was great. We appreciate your time.
No problem. Take care. Thanks.
Bye, everyone.